Hey everybody, welcome to the Something Pretty podcast where we talk about Deadwood, the HBO show. My name is Wes and I'm joined by Clay, who's buying himself a fucking bum's rush. Clay, how are you?
What a type you must consort with to not fear a beating for such an insult.
Those are the two I had written down that could open, and we both chose one. We didn't even talk about it before. What does bum rush mean? Is there like an actual meaning to it? In the video game Final Fantasy VI, one of the characters, like super text, is called Bum Rush, and it seems like I'm misconstruing what it actually means. Do you know?
I don't know, because my understanding of it was always a term used for like some sort of surprise attack.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know, like to
how bums fight in that video.
No, like
series?
I have never.
Is it just you attack from behind? That's why it's called the bum rush?
I have never linked it to any sort of the homelessness crisis at all.
Have you linked it to the posterior of a person? Is that what you're taking as the bum?
Kind of. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really extrapolated it out at all. It just
I always thought it was kind of an overwhelming, like I got bum. I guess it's like a surprise attack that like overwhelms you or something is a bum rush. I don't know. Not sure. Bum rush.
Yeah, I don't know. Forcible ejection of someone.
Why does Silas
came in the saloons of late 19th century New York, where vagrants and other hungry people attempted to take advantage of the sometimes sumptuous free lunch counters, which were meant for drinkers only. Oh. Okay. So basically, they put out food and all the bums rushed to the food.
Right. Yeah. And I guess it is kind of an overwhelming aspect to it, right? Like you go with such force that you can take what you want from it. I guess that makes sense.
What a strange term that both I don't think many people use anymore, but also is pretty derogatory to a certain extent.
Well, I always thought it had a sexual aspect to it or something. A bum rush. I don't know. It always felt like it was a
That's your answer to everything.
A violation of some kind. Well, Silas is not going to give Jarry a bum rush. That I was thinking of, and maybe none of us were thinking of, because he says it right to his face that there's going to be a bum rush, a bum's rush, as he says. We are here in the Something Pretty podcast to talk about The Horrors Can Come, which is the next episode of Deadwood. We are going to break it down right after this.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
This episode is called The Horrors Can Come, directed by Greg Feinberg, written by Brian McDonald. It's the 11th episode of Deadwood's second season. In this one, the bodies of dead Chinese whores are burned in town. Bullock works on a coffin for William. Wu solicits Al's help against the San Francisco cocksucker, Lee. Al decides that Hearst's chink boss in that alley ain't to my fucking taste. Trixie visits Alma and apologizes for butting into the widow's affairs. Martha packs her bags. Trixie asks Al if the whores can attend William's memorial. Walcott offers to buy the Grand Hotel from Farnham, who is distressed by the offer. Trixie readies the girls for the funeral as Alma talks to Sophia. I know we are as much in the world in our pain as in our happiness, she says. All of Deadwood gathers outside the Bullock house for the funeral service. Martha rushes back into the house to take a last look at William. As Ellsworth carries Sophia up the stairs to the Grand Central, Alma answers yes to that question you've asked me. So here we are.
I should have used my other alternate for when you threw it over to me at the beginning was to mention that you needed to brush your teeth because you had 3 pounds of cock on your breath.
Also a good one.
Let no one that's turned in a needle try eating the dope or shoving it up themselves, as I will be checking eyes for signs before we fucking leave. And no being drunk either, Jen. And wash your fucking mouth. You got 7 kinds of cock breath.
Not a super quotable episode, but there's some zingers that are mixed in to this one. I don't know if there's like there's no sort of scene with a great thematic quote, but there's a lot of just little one-off lines that make me laugh in this one.
Also, just for clarity's sake, there's two terms. There's bum rush, which is a verb, which is something is to strike, take, or push one's way in with great force.
Right.
The bum's rush, *S, is to be kicked out of an event or place of business.
Oh, that's what Adams was saying. He said bum's rush.
Yeah, you can bum rush something, or you can be given the bum's rush.
Okay, so it makes sense. It's that we're learning things. It's like that Jew harp history lesson that we learned. Yeah.
Either way, it really shines a light on the homelessness problem in America. I think these to be as much today as it was in the era of Deadwood, something that needs to be addressed.
Is Mayor London? What's that woman's name? London. What's the mayor of San Francisco? London Breed. Is she going to come up with the Bums Rush Act of 2023 or something? I hope so. There's a quote here that kind of ties into stuff and is more thematically relevant. Swearengen has a line that he says to Lee, which is, "By God, act civilized, even if you ain't." So this is kind of an interesting episode. It's a little bit of like a slow down one. It's the second to last episode, the penultimate, as we say. Deals with William's funeral and the town sort of working through all of that. And in the background, while William's funeral is the main activity that's taking place, a lot of the subplots are working their way towards their conclusions at the end of the season. So what'd you think of this one, The Horse Can Come?
I thought it was good. I think this would not be the first episode of Deadwood I showed somebody, because this is the kind of episode where, unless you have been watching it from the beginning of the season, this is pretty dense, and it is not really what's the word? It's not really accessible to someone who hasn't been watching, because it is a lot of moving pieces, building off of stuff that's been happening for 5 episodes and stuff. And so it was one where I was watching it going like, I'm enjoying this. I like how things are moving around and how this is playing out. But the text of what's going on, and especially the subtext of what's going on, could be a little bit hard to follow if you're not kind of up to date with what's going on. Yeah.
Would you I think the best example, and probably one of my favorite thing in the episode, I think, is that how they're continuing to choose to portray Al throughout his events. Yes. And he kind of lines up with that, which is that his actions have a lot of subtext to them, and he's plotting in a way that he's been plotting for the entire season. He's kind of doing like political power plays, trying to maintain his position at the top. What I think is interesting is that like Al is in a position where he is trying to become the best ally for Hearst when Hearst inevitably arrives, right? So there's not this sense that the show is building up a stridently anti-Hearst alliance that is going to like have the battle of good versus evil when it arrives. Mm-hmm. It's more that he's trying to position himself in a place where he will be more likely to be ingratiated into Hearst than someone like Cy Tolliver would be. And so there's this interesting thing of like Al is trying to balance all this, and he can't do the sort of satisfying narrative act or arc, which would be that he sides with Wu and cleans out Lee's men, right? Like he can't, because Hearst backs Lee, Al cannot just side with Wu and say, like, we're taking our town back right now. Like, this is the way that things are going to go. And I find that a lot of his interactions in the episode itself are him balancing the needs of being this, like, pragmatist boss man character with his desire to actually fit in and like be a part of this community that's building up. So he's sort of torn between what he needs to do and what he actually wants to do. And I think it's a really effective portrayal of where Al sits at this point in time. And I think the writing and the performances are really nice, that it shows like both sides of what he wants to be and what he can't be at the same time.
I see you made it through the fucking night.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Oh, this is gonna be a pleasant fucking day, them wailing and gnashing their teeth.
Will they be allowed to pay their respects?
By who?
By you, most importantly, as always. And should you and your greatness consent, will he let them in his fucking house?
I won't object. But it's yours to keep them she-apes from disgracing me. Ask the Bullock's feelings. Get the Jew to find them out.
Should I, ask about you also?
What the fuck would I want to go there for?
Yeah, I was happy that that he broke it down for everybody after the scene with Wu, because I felt like Johnny once again, not totally tracking what his angle was until he was like explained why both options he had and which one made him look better in front of Hearst and stuff like that. I was like, okay, all right, I get that. And it's funny because this is the kind of show, I should say, a lot of other shows would probably be building to this idea of, oh shit, it's going to be Al versus Hearst. This is going to be crazy. And it makes sense that Al isn't about to walk up to him with a gun as much as walk up to him with an open hand, you know,
right.
Because his position and how it benefits him. He's a long game guy. We've been talking about that since the beginning. And figuring out how to sidle up to Hearst while not giving away his entire hand is definitely the thing that he would do.
Yeah. Yeah, he's I like his balancing act between like he tells everybody else to go to the funeral, but he says that like, why the fuck would I want to go to the funeral? But then at the very end, while they're having the service or whatever, he comes out onto the balcony and tries to see.
Yeah, I love that. I thought that was great. I really liked that. When he sees them coming back, he hurries back inside to me, so it doesn't look like he's been out there watching the whole time.
Yeah, and then comes out casually again as they stroll down.
I thought maybe one of my favorite scenes, because I think it is such a great illustration of what Al's character is, was when Jarry comes into the gem and Al brushes him back, saying like, I speak for Bullock, and I say that no business would be done on the day of my son's funeral or something like that. And he's very hardlined about that. But then he just drops in that thing where he's like, if you come back with $1 more than $50,000, and Jarry's like, oh wait, so
yeah, not a single dollar,
things?
not a single dollar can convince me of your intent or whatever he says. Yeah,
yeah, and he's like, so wait, there's non-monetary things, and he's like, I don't do business on this thing. And it's like, it was just, because it was such a what we know about Al up to this point is, I think there's a bit of truth in what he's saying, where we know that he's not a complete monster, and that he does have some he's not without sympathy.
Yeah, he's not Jarry, in other words. But,
right.
Yeah,
he's not without sympathy for people who are in pain, and he can relate to that, but at the same time he's also not going to let a situation go that could be to his advantage.
You look fucking mournful. Even more.
Sad day, gentlemen, on which commerce must intrude.
Says who that it must?
Because of the death of the sheriff's son.
You need to ask, you don't deserve an answer.
I should say that even in his hour of grief, Sheriff Bullock conveyed to me his reliance on you as his proxy.
And as his proxy, I don't do business on the day of my godson's passing.
I'm compelled to wonder, Mr. Swearengen, if this show of grief is a pretext to some other purpose.
What a type you must consort with. that you not fear beating for such an insult?
If Montana, for example, had sweetened the terms in annexing this camp, and you delay the closing of our business not for piety, but to pursue your other negotiations.
Leave here with your sick, fucking ghoulish thinking.
I'll have further instructions within the day. If not honor, practicality dictates granting Yankton further counter.
You come back here offering $1 more than that 50, you find yourself face down in the horse shit.
But you would entertain enhancement of the offer other than cash.
I do not discuss business on this day, Silas.
Buying yourself a fucking bum's rush, Commissioner. When Mr. Swearengen says go, he means it.
All right. I'm not without imagination. A counter without currency is in the offing.
I think another scene that represents that even more, because the Jarry and Al scene is more like a performance on Al's part, right? Like they're still trying to play Jarry in a way that they get what they want out of it. So they're going to make Jarry sweat is basically the reason that they're delaying that. It's not that he has a sort of like highfalutin ideal about we don't talk business. I thought a good example of what you're saying is when Al goes to talk to Bullock in the first place, as Bullock is carrying the coffin back, because I feel that gives me that feels like much more of a sincere, I'm really sorry that we have to talk about this now sense, more than when Jarry goes up to the house and when Bullock like walks Jarry down the stairs and Jerry's very nervous about like, can you confirm that what he said? And Bullock yells at him and he scuttles off. But the scene with Swearengen and Bullock is much more of a respectful distance. But we need to talk business right now, unfortunately. So let's get it over with.
Yeah, I like the. Would you mind if I walked 20 paces behind
you?
Yeah.
Yeah. He offers them the handkerchief to wipe his bloody hand, and Bullock does not accept it. So it's not like they are simpatico or whatever. They're not completely on the same plane of thought about what is important to do at this very moment. Obviously, because Bullock's dealing with the death of William, but it still accomplishes the goal that they needed to be done.
And a lot's changed between them since the first season, because I think Al very easily could have used that opportunity to dig in on him and fire some barbs at him just for the sake of doing it. But clearly there's a respect there now, even if they don't necessarily like each other.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that Al, they bring back like the blowjob monologues come back in this one towards the end, and what it does here again is what it usually does. What's
the
that?
The lasting legacy of Ricky Jay.
What it does here is that it shows Al uses it as an excuse to. Well, basically, the show uses that as an excuse or an example of how to show Al, which is that he's between these two worlds, which is that he confides in the girl who's going down on him that like the funeral and everything has gotten him upset because it reminds him of when his adopted brother died and his adoptive father beat him to take out his anger on him. And so he's connecting on that. He's sort of like talking, but not really in a conversation with anybody. And then it just ends with like he's being mean to her in the way that he usually is, but it just ends with like this sort of innocent question about like, do you dye your hair? Which I think is very funny. That
was hilarious. Like the point at which, not only the delivery, but the point at which they cut after he says it was A+.
And it's just it's a nice scene that just shows that like Al is trying to sort of like be a connection to people, right? Like he's trying to sort of be a part of a community, and he's trying to open up and share things about himself, but he's still just the kind of the pimp Lothario character that's running the town. And it's the two sides of him colliding there, I think, are pretty effective in that blowjob monologue scene. I like that. I just think that he's really he's pretty isolated in some ways. Like he's actually
definitely, yeah.
He's a fairly effective politician in some ways, and that like he does a very good job of keeping his personal and his goals separate from each other. And in that way, he seems like he's a better politician than someone like Jarry would be. And I just think that that's an interesting side effect of him. Like, he's kind of the ideal politician in that he's relentless and focused and somewhat ruthless, but he's also not overly... He's pragmatic at the same time. He's not particularly ideological or anything.
Yeah, and the thing that makes those blowjob monologues so sad is it's funny because like the first one was very much just a crescendo to the episode kind of thing.
Yeah.
The second one I was like, okay, are we gonna do this every time we need Al to talk about something? Feels like it's doing this for the sake of doing it. But on this one it was the first time where I was like, oh, this actually works pretty well solely because Al is so alone. Al has no one to talk to.
Yeah. And
so the only way he can manage to try to be close to someone is in this weird, fucked up power way. Like, I don't even know if he would talk this way to Trixie.
Right.
And if he did, he doesn't anymore. And like, there's no one else who is even remotely as close to it. Like, that's why he's talking to the severed head. He's got nobody to talk to.
Yep. No, that's exactly it. He is just alone on his island there, and he certainly doesn't talk to Trixie about personal things like that.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't reveal his own personal secrets or his own experiences to anybody else. It just seems. I think the girl's name is Dolly. Dolly is the one who actually gets this side of Al.
He's got kind of a Daniel Plainview element about him.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, that he's always looking for the next rung on the ladder to grab. He's
Plainview was never open at all, right? Or am I misremembering?
Plainview
the only time
he was
open.
Up. Yeah, the only time Plainview is open is when he opens up to the guy who pretends to be his brother before he kills him.
Right. Yeah. So there is kind of a similar thing there. It is kind of a separation of like he's the opposite of Bullock, right? Like, Bullock can't do anything but be emotional and respond badly to his emotions and take everything into emotion and say everything through clenched teeth whenever the situation arises. But Swearengen's not the same.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things too where it's like, I feel like if given the opportunity, if there were no extenuating circumstances, I bet Al and Seth would probably be friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that kind of thing where you see like a retired cop and a retired criminal who used to spar with each other like 30 years ago. Now they like go out for drinks all the time and just like talk about bullshit that they used to go. Like, it's that kind of thing, right? I feel like if it wasn't for the things they were unfortunately tasked with doing, they actually probably would get along and have a good time together.
I guess in contrast to the people getting along, one of my favorite scenes in this, and I don't know if it's been done well, but I think that it's interesting, is that I love the scene towards the end of this one, which features Tolliver, Walcott, and Jarry talking to each other in the Bella Union. And like, the fraying of their relationship, I think, has been really well done. None of them can really stand each other by this point, but I really like... you had talked about like one of your favorite things is characters who's like kind of the shifty ally, basically, or the one that can't 100% be trusted. I really like antagonists who are in a group who are antagonistic towards each other. I think is a strong thing to do. And I like the scenes here. Like we talked about it in a previous podcast. Walcott has kind of become a little bit less relevant to the plot that's going on, but I think that it kind of makes sense because all of them are becoming less important, which is what Walcott actually makes like literal in this when he says it to Tolliver. He says, "You're becoming desperate. You can feel your position slipping away from you." And I feel that while maybe those three haven't had as much to do in the past couple episodes, it is just the fact that their grasp on the situation is falling apart from them, and they're really just waiting on Hearst to arrive because they've kind of like, for a sports analogy, they've run up the score but the other team is coming back and they're just trying to run the clock out until the game ends. And they're not,
Right.
and when teams do that in sports, they usually start playing badly because they're not keeping the intensity up and things like that.
Right,
And I feel that's what's happening with these three.
And then sometimes, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you really blow it pretty bad.
When Tom Brady makes his appearance in season 3 of Deadwood as
And as spectacular as anyone has ever blown anything.
except for Dolly in this episode.
Yes.
What did you think of Tolliver and Walcott and Mr. Jarry?
Seems to me, Wolcott, last your eyes had that unsettled look. Matters got grave for some young girls. What does it? Do you know? Or does the water just come on you quick?
Be ye afraid of the sword.
Jesus
For
fucking
wrath
Christ!
bringeth the punishment
Get
of the
him
sword.
the fuck out of here!
Oh, you're a desperate man, aren't you, Tolliver? Desperate. You feel your position weakening.
And what I do in a situation like that instead of murdering helpless women, I get on my hind legs and fight.
Mr. Walcott! I have nourished a suspicion that we might pass each other in the telegraph office. I, of course, have been communicating with Yankton. I wonder, would your messages be sent to Helena?
Mr. Hearst is not a partisan in territorial rivalries, Commissioner.
Oh, God. I want to believe that.
The great man himself will allay your doubts. He joins us within the week.
Yeah, I like that. I liked seeing, because, I mean, their alliance is one that is just by its nature eventually going to blow up because Walcott is at the service of Hearst and Jarry is at the service of Yankton directly.
Yeah.
And Tolliver is at the service of himself. So they're all eventually them fraying and kind of pulling in their own respective directions makes perfect sense. I was also thinking, like, if I don't begrudge. I don't know how banking works, but especially in the 1800s.
Yeah.
But I would be mad at Jarry too if he rolled up to my place of business and was like, "I'd like to catch this $50,000 check." Can you just do that?
They deal with surprising amounts of money in this show that, like, because Farnham is offered to buy the hotel in this one too, but or to sell his hotel, but they frequently deal with large amounts of money that I feel the characters don't properly react to in some way. Like, let's say $50,000 in 1877.
It's at least 100, right?
Let's see. It's $2 million.
Holy shit. Okay. Yeah. All right. Jesus.
So, I mean, maybe Tolliver has that kind of cash. And from what I was reading historically, like, the Gem used to pull in absurd amounts of money every day.
Really? Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that doesn't seem all that particularly crazy. But, they talk about large sums of money as if it was nothing. Like, what did Mose sell his claim for? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't remember what it was either. But
so, I guess I've never thought about how cashing a check actually works. So, like, if it does Cy in that instance, he gives him $50,000, and then the bank, Hearst's bank, like, wires him the money to recoup. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
imagine,
All
or
right.
they'd have to. The banks would do the business for you. I guess at that point they were probably doing that. Like, you give it into the bank, and the bank owns your note worth that amount, and they can go cash it with Hearst's bank somewhere down the line.
Money's fake. It doesn't matter.
It's in a pre-digital world, it all seems obviously very slow and clunky, but I don't know. It'd be more difficult.
And it's gone.
And it's gone. I mean, imagine how much money they probably lost just from, like, ledgers being lost and things.
Oh, sure.
There's no, like, digital record. It's just gone. If the hardware store catches on fire, almost bank is out of luck.
Is that a foreshadowing of something that happens in the next season?
The passion of Bullock sets that house of hammers ablaze, unfortunately. No, in this one, instead, just the Chinese horse gets set ablaze, which is something that's been going on in the background and that the rest of the town is not particularly down with. I find it interesting they don't have Wu subtitled in this one. When the Chinese actors talk to each other, they don't subtitle it.
I was wondering if they were going to, but I don't really think you need it. I think his performance is good enough that you get the idea.
Yeah, you get the idea that he's upset.
Yeah, like you watch him talk to Swearengen and you're like, okay, I don't understand him, but I kind of understand him.
Yep. Although the one thing I don't understand, why was he giving him the china plate? Was that a gift?
No, I think it was just. I think it was just the only thing he had with a map of China on it, and he was trying to show him like where the guy came from or something.
Do you think Al was correct in that does Wu actually? Because I always thought that Swearengen is kind of making fun of him when he's saying like the bones of your ancestors have to be buried in your spiritual homeland for your spirits to rest. He says something like that, but he can't possibly be talking about that because Wu is much more pragmatic. I think I don't.
No, I think he's just. I think in that moment, Al is not understanding what he's trying to tell him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't track I thought it was. I was wondering if it was a gift that he was trying to give, but it doesn't seem that way with the way that the conversation concludes.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was just. I think it's just the only thing that he owns that has. He's trying to show him like. Gotcha. I don't know if he's trying to show him where Lee comes from or where the girls come from or something.
Yeah.
But there's some. He found it necessary to show that whoever he was talking about comes from this section of China, and the only thing he had with a map on it was this plate.
China, some fine China.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
he's trying. That reminds me of something.
Go ahead.
A couple friends of mine went to China vacation a couple years ago, and brought us back some souvenirs, right? And which was very nice. They didn't have to do that, and for some reason, I immediately flipped it over to see if it was made in China, because in America, that's a mark of like, oh, well, that's kind of cheap. But if you bring back a souvenir from China that still has that, it's not a different item. It would be the same item that you bought in America, but you bought it in China and the bottom says made in China. Does that now make it like more unique and like authentic?
Because the Chinese kept it for themselves and then you bought it from them.
Yes.
It would probably say made in Taiwan or something on it, or Vietnam.
Well, no, this one did specifically say made in China on it.
No?
So, I don't know. Is that more authentic that that the I Love New York hat that you bought in Shanghai was made in China versus the one that you bought in New York?
That's it might be. I would consider it. People would. You'd have to tell the whole story about how you went to China to get this thing that was made in China, when it's quite easy to get them over here, unfortunately. No,
right.
But did you mention what it was? Was it anything? Was it just like a knickknack, or was it something like authentically Chinese?
It was like a Chinese style like brush.
Gotcha. No, I don't know. Does China come from China?
The term,
like the plates, the fancy plates.
I think yes. I think that term does originate. In China, I have no idea.
Do you have any China? Any fine China?
No. Our finest China is from Pier 1.
My in-laws gave us China, and it's like, it's the standard stock complaint, but it's like our generation has no use for this shit, and it's just cluttering up the cabinet. So every opportunity we have some trash throw out day, I'm like, Amy, we got to throw these plates with acorns on them or whatever. These things gotta go, and she always feels bad. She thinks her mother will be upset.
You gotta stand them up, and you gotta show them off. It's like China is like action figures for the
boomer
the 19th century.
Yeah,
because like my house, the house that we have is a Victorian, and so I think it's at this point over 100 years old, and it has those little things that run along the top of the walls. I think they're called like China ledges or China shelves.
Yeah.
And the point was you were supposed to put your plates up there and display your plates.
Right.
And now Frankenstein, Wolverine, and Batman are up.
Broken plates down below, action figures up high.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's I want to get rid of them, but Amy says that they're personal. Her mother would be offended. It was like, well, your mother wouldn't have given them to us if she cared about them so deeply.
Do you think that in the 1800s there were people who were like, you took that china out of the box, it's worth a lot more if you keep it in the box?
Well, that's why I thought it was a gift, because maybe we're giving Al an actual old china dish is like, this is like one of China's greatest exports or something. At this point.
I don't think so. That's not how I read that scene.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it is. Yeah, but I don't know. But I don't know. It was just I couldn't. Because he drew everything else, right? Like he drew pictures of the girls being burned. He drew a picture of the San Francisco cocksucker. I didn't really understand why he couldn't just draw China on a map or something. But.
Wes, have you tried to draw China?
It's just...
if you've got something that already has China drawn on it, that's just wasted calories if you're trying to draw China.
Draw a boat or something. How'd they get across? They did something. I don't know. Lee and Wu. Al's trying to tone the two of them down with each other. He does that by effectively, part of the reason that he doesn't back Wu is because he's trying to slow roll this situation. So he tells Wu he's not going to back him, which he thinks will slow Wu down from doing some sort of violent act against Lee. And then he calls Lee in and says, like, listen to me, asshole. Like, we're civilized people over here, and we don't go killing people when children have been murdered. So take a rest for a day. But they're ultimately the same aim.
Why don't I back him?
Because Hearst is in the other chink's corner. Meaning Wu has to lose.
Wouldn't be the worst thing. Backing a loser to Hearst. Let him pick me up from the canvas after. Dust me the fuck off. I raise the great man's hand. Murmur. Best as I can through split lips. Your man beat my man's balls off, Mr. Hearst. But Hearst Chink, bossing that alley, ain't to my fucking taste.
To be fair to Lee, that's not in the handbook when you come to America, that you don't burn prostitutes on days where children are being buried.
It's kind of a deep cultural cut. It's not something that you immediately pick up. Well, yeah, I don't.
It's more of a upstate New York thing.
I know it's the disrespect of doing it, but why not just bury them? Really, isn't that seem easier?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't sure about that either. It's funny. I in my memory of this show from the previous time I had watched it, I remembered Wu and the Chinatown stuff being a lot more prevalent than it actually is.
Oh, okay.
I remember there being a lot more of it, and I'm not really sure why.
Yeah, and we're definitely past your point of what you've seen to this point.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely past that.
No, he's not. He's not super prominent. He's kind of like all the we haven't seen Charlie Utter in a couple episodes either. Some characters just come and go.
With him?
What else do you think about this? What'd you think of the funeral sequence and stuff? I think that Oliphant and Anna Gunn do a great job of being the grieving parents. I like all that scenes and sequences. One of the show doing another interesting thing, which is why I like Deadwood so much, is that it refuses to give you 100% emotional catharsis, right? Like there's the stuff where Utter beats Walcott in the street, which is nice, but then it all is going to blow back. Like you can't attack Hearst's man. There's all these kind of implications to it. There have been other scenes like that where, like Bullock beating the shit out of Alma's father. It seems like a cathartic moment, but it ultimately blows back in his face there too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same thing here where you're expecting... And it's like this very emotional funeral service for a kid who's been murdered. But the show is clearly saying that Andy Cramed is not a good reverend at this point.
Yes.
And he's like terrible at it. And he's kind of ruining the service. But I understand that the show thematically is kind of saying like the bonds of community and the sort of meaningfulness and the emotion that's put into this scene is much more of a personal thing than it is this institutional church expectation. And like the institution of the church is there supposedly to provide comfort, But all it ends up doing is like the institution comes and says like, what's everybody's favorite Bible passage? And no one can name anything, you know? So there's this like, they don't want to, the connection and the real problem and the real sense of like belonging is deeper than what Cramed is. But I think in a different show, that sermon would have been like a balls to the wall, like tearjerker of a speech. And it's not that, which I think is an interesting contrast and something Deadwood does all the time. Yeah, and again, it's something they play so subtly, and it's subtle enough that it puts you in the same state of kind of awkward, not really knowing if this is good or bad. Yes. When
he starts doing the actual ceremony, and the passage he chose to read is basically like a Garth Marenghi quote.
Yeah, the worms are going to devour your eyeballs.
Jesus stared in disbelief as his hands fell off. From them rose millions of tiny maggots. Maggots, 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 all over the floor of the post office.
It is just
so
like that,
saith the Lord.
Yeah. Crame doesn't. He's awkward at trying to figure out how to do it, which is understandable. Like they kind of layer that too, because it's not. You imagine that all conversations about bearing a child probably don't go smoothly, but once it's all said and done, you realize that he's actually quite bad at it. He falls into the water when the service is going on. He picks a terrible passage that upsets the mother of the deceased.
Well, you know, it's funny. He starts off with the what is it, Psalm 23? Is that what it is? The though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that kind of thing, whatever it was. But apparently people stop before they get to the maggots. Generally, when they're reading that at a funeral.
And it just kind of goes on and on. I'll wrap it up here.
William Bullock, beloved son of Martha and Seth, called to God age 11 years, as we are called by his passing. Let us bow our heads. From Psalm number 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures, he leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Oh, that my words were now written, that they were graven with an iron pen and lead in the rock forever. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes shall behold.
Yeah, and you know his act is, I don't know if his badness at being a reverend is a statement of the show of that Cramed is just trying to find his own way. And I do believe that Cramed is a believer, but he's bad enough at it that like Cy Tolliver can't believe he's not running a con in the town when he has this conversation with him. Yeah.
It's clear to me that this is the first time he's ever done this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because as we were talking about last episode, it's like, well, he's only been gone for like a year, and now he's coming back as like purporting to be a full-fledged minister. And how much could he really have done this in that amount of time? And of course, you know, he injects himself into the situation because he thinks he should, but he clearly has never done this before. And which makes that scene that much more, or the scene with the Bullocks that much more funny's not the word, but you know, they're relying on him to pick an appropriate thing, and he's relying on them to pick an appropriate thing, and so they just end up kind of, you know, in the middle. But yeah, does Cy grab him by the balls?
He does, scene? Which is that reference to it's just an expression. It's like got him by the balls, which Silas, when they had that confusion about put woo on ice, and they explained that it doesn't literally mean it, and Silas says it's an expression, like got him by the balls. I'm
curious to see how much more interaction Tolliver and Cramed have, because I also am not totally sure what Kramer's angle is, if he's legit or what.
Yep. Do you think he's actually running a game?
I don't think so. I feel like you don't. I feel like you don't inject yourself into the funeral service of a small child in front of the entire town. Well, maybe you do. I don't know.
It's a ballsy, a ballsy play.
Yeah, it's a ballsy play. My first instinct is no, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. That doesn't mean that I'm right.
We'll see. They resolve things in a coming episode. And outside of that, the other parts of the funeral, I like the. It's another scene of the community coming together to attend William's funeral. They get the Martha comes around to letting everybody come into the house to view the body. I also thought that was a weird Kramer choice. He's like, everyone can go in and look at the corpse.
Yeah, right.
That's the wrong word to use, Reverend. And also just the last point about Kramer is that the actor, I think, does a great job of not speaking well in delivering that eulogy. You know, like he is not a Martin Luther King black gospel leader. You know, like he is not delivering the sermon of a lifetime up there. It is really, it's acting like he's the first time he's read the verse or something. Like he's kind of stumbling through it, and I found it was effective and interesting, and kind of the the comedy of the situation is compounded on top of everything.
Yeah, I thought Anna Gunn was really good in that scene. I mean, she's really good in the whole episode. I think the way that they portray the Bullocks dealing with this was really unique and well done, in that there is a certain sense of denial that they are putting themselves in until that moment where she rushes in and kind of it all kind of hits her in that moment as to what's going on and why people should be given the option to pay their last respects and stuff. And it's a strange. Funerals are weird.
Yeah.
You know, you never you don't really think about them outside of the time that you're at them, and they do have differing. They mean different things to different people, I guess. And
in terms of the people at the funeral, you mean? Like that's always the thing that's strange to me, is that there's a huge emotional gulf between the Bullocks and random guy who's in the town, you know?
Yeah. And that emotional gulf is something that is you kind of have to consider with your funeral. And that's kind of the point that they get to, is like this. There's the people of the town seem like they need closure as much as the family does.
Yeah.
And yeah,
it's a statement on the what Reverend Smith in the first season. They are all parts of the body. That if they don't work in unison, then it doesn't work. And it is, metaphorically, it is just more of like the town needs to heal as much as the Bullocks themselves do.
Yeah, and there's nobody. I mean, obviously they don't focus on anybody enough to really do anything with this. But there's nobody who seems like they're there to gawk or anything. You know, it seems like everybody who's there is legitimately there to pay respects and feel awful.
They want to go too. Like even Johnny is like that. They want, and not for nefarious like spying purposes. They actually want to go to the service.
Right, and I really liked the argument about the boots.
Yes, yeah. The boots, the bird, and what is Trixie spilling whiskey outside the door?
Yeah, I didn't understand the whiskey thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if that was to repel evil spirits or something.
Evil spirits, yeah. But they're all coming up with their own sort of idiosyncratic superstition, and none of the others believe in the superstition of the others. They all have their own superstitions that they believe in.
Yeah, and I really like it when they have these moments where the whole town actually does affect the entire town. I think it's it brings all the disparate characters together in a way that I think really bolsters the show as a whole. As like this is a story about Deadwood, not just Seth Bullock or not just Al Swearengen. You know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I You mentioned it sort of offhand earlier, but I think that the selfishness of Tolliver, Walcott, and Jarry is the reason that they can't unite with each other. Like they do not have a common purpose between those three, outside of basically trying to get one over on the town. But their own individual drives are all different. Where Tolliver's doing it for himself, Jarry's doing it for Yankton, and then Walcott is doing it for Hearst. And there is no community building in the way that the funeral seems to build things or like create a sense of unity amongst the rest of the town. Like fittingly, Tolliver does not attend the funeral. You know, like it's that. Kind of thing.
He's a shithead.
Tolliver wouldn't go, but he's getting more and more frustrated. Obviously, as time goes along.
His reaction would be the same as Al's, except he would be authentic.
Yes, he would not. He actually would not understand why he should go to the funeral.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through my notes here. Any of the other conversations that we had?
I liked I liked the scene with Jane having to take a bath.
Yes. Yeah. She brings up a good point about the dirty water.
That's true. Yeah, that's why people take showers.
Yes. Right.
Are they angling towards some sort of relationship with the two of them?
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
The other thing I was thinking was, are they angling towards turning the Bella Union? No, not the Bella Union. Chez Ami into like a hospital?
They are going to change it into something. Yes.
Okay.
So it does become reborn in the same way that Moe's Manual is going to be reborn too when he wakes up. I'm just looking at my notes. Blaznoff passes out all the telegrams. Blaznoff and Farnham have a funny conversation. He's like, Blaznoff, you don't need to come in here yelling and waking everybody up and shouting at people who have guns and might shoot you. He's like, just give me your telegraphs and I'll put them in the mailbox. He says, I can't do that, Mr. Farnham. And then Farnham is also proposed to by Walcott to sell the hotel, which I think is a fun scene. Walcott's impatient with Farnham is very funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
He really hates Farnham, as everybody hates Farnham. But some of Farnham's best, he's overly concerned and pretending to be cool. He asks him if he's got a chill. And he says he's like, if the solution does not present itself in 10 minutes, I have suffered a mortal injury on my way.
That was, I gotta say, as far as excuses to weasel your way out of a conversation go, A+. A+ from E.B. Farnham.
What price will you take for your hotel, Mr. Farnham?
Why do you ask?
Because I want to buy it.
Do you, sir? I presume as agent for other parties?
Presume away.
Is it warm in here?
To me, it seems chilly.
Chilly, is it? Richardson, Mr. Wolcott finds it chilly. Not around. I'll see to it, sir. If you are chilly in 10 minutes' time, pray for my immortal soul, because some fatal mishap will have befallen me. Short of which, I will not fail to dispel the chill now afflicting you. Cocksuckers think they can take away everything.
Yep, he's trying to sell the hotel.
So I thought that there was a previous episode where he had wanted to entertain an offer on the, or was that?
But I think it's more the implication is that Hearst is not a Hearst deal is kind of like a mob deal. It's like they're offering you something, but it's not really what you want to take.
Right.
So I think that's why Farnham's concerned about it, because he stands to make a lot of money on this if he sells it. So I assume that's what the problem is. Because Farnham, when he freaks out, he has some line about like, these cocksuckers are taking everything from us, which I think is a legit Farnham reaction. It also kind of sums up what Hearst has been doing in the background. I feel like there's one other scene that I'm missing out on? Jarry, we talked to the Bullocks, Swearengen, Martha. No, I guess not.
Is the final scene Seth appealing to her to stay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
She has the one of the reviews I was reading just made the point that Kramed is terrible at it, but Alma actually gives to Sophia the eulogy that was deserving of William there, which is like the sums up the whole town, which is her point. I can't quote it accurately, but I'll put the clip in. Is that like we live in this life in both our pain and our happiness, and would you share your sorrow with me? Which is what she gets Sophia to sort of bond with her and hug about. But Bullock at the end with Martha has a similar line, which is like, it's something about like, as we are now, just to maintain where we are. And because Martha's been threatening to leave the entire episode, right? She's packed her bags and things like that. So he's just pleading with her to stay.
You know, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun as far as what happens in the next season, but I am legitimately surprised that they seem to have just straight up dropped the Bullock and Alma stuff.
No, okay. Yep.
I mean, maybe as she gets more pregnant, that becomes another more of a thing. I don't know, but I've been. That's another thing where I feel like on another show that would be a constant thing that they were fucking around with.
Well, they are doing something that'll make that easier to get around, right? Which they say in this episode. So she gives her answer of yes to Ellsworth to the marriage proposal. Did you have any thoughts about that? Were you surprised? Because I think I remember when this first came up, you seemed a little bit incredulous that they would actually get married. It seemed more like it was like a joke thing that the show was doing, or like an option that was being presented seriously but wasn't actually going to pan out this way.
Well, I honestly, I don't remember. You have to refer to the tape on that one. But I think
you didn't say anything specific. It was just you just kind of like, you know, there's obviously the jokes about like he's way out of her league and stuff like that, and it made it seem like it was more of a thing he was doing to save face, and it wasn't something she was going to take him up on.
Well, I think my thought was that was her viewpoint on it. Like that's because he is kind of taking he's taking a huge swing there, right?
Yep.
And it's putting her in a weird position, given that, and she's the kind of person who I'm sure took into account the optics of it in how silly it might look for her.
Well, although he's doing it more for her than she
definitely.
is for him. Yeah, right.
Oh,
like because
100%,
it spares the embarrassments of the pregnancy and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely doing it for her. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's gonna benefit monetarily or something.
Yeah.
But he's not doing it for nefarious reasons.
Right. It's a very short scene between those two, but I like it.
Yeah, I was surprised it was so short. He doesn't even really. He just kind of like smirks a bit, and that's kind of the end of it, which is, you know,
he doesn't say anything back. She just says yes. But that will be there. It's not a spoiler, but the season finale is heavily built around their wedding. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely did not see that.
Yeah.
So are they? Are Alma and Bullock? That's just not a thing anymore? Like, do they come back to that at all?
They'll deal with it next episode. Subtly, but they do deal with it.
But like, it's not like next season is they're secretly on the slide screwing.
No.
Okay.
It's pretty much over.
That's the thing that surprises me a bit, is it's when it was over, it was pretty much just over.
Oh, like they're not having like an undercover affair or anything like that on the side.
Yeah, it seems like the kind of thing that would, for most other shows, would be too juicy to let go.
No, yeah, the marriage basically seals the deal about what the reality of the situation is at that point, right? Because like as we're building towards it, the Bullocks being united in this way and Alma being united with Ellsworth is like a sort of bookends on the whole situation.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other scenes in this one? It's kind of a low-key episode. It's not something that I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite episodes, and it's definitely one that's much more low energy going into the finale. But I thought it was good. I don't know if you have any other scenes that you wanted to mention or anything else that you wanted to bring up.
Not that I can think of. It's a very utilitarian episode. Like it's kind of outside of the funeral. It is kind of just stringing some some threads along, but I don't find it to be a difficult watch or anything. I think they continue to do that stuff in ways that's pretty engaging.
Yeah, it's one of the actors who's in the next season brought up a good point that I thought was kind of interesting. Although I'm not a literary buff enough to know it, and I don't have the Deadwood Bible at hand to read it, but he was saying that him and Milch bonded over their love of Faulkner. They were both like English lit kids. I think Milch went to like Yale for poetry and stuff like that. And they bonded over their love of William Faulkner. And I don't know Faulkner enough to know this, but it sounded like, when the guy said it, it sounded like he knew what he was talking about, and it sounded correct, which is that he thought that David Milch was actually kind of writes like Faulkner, and that Faulkner apparently can be somewhat difficult to understand while you're reading it, and it feels like it doesn't quite make sense what's going on, but by the end of the book, you kind of get what's happened and everything.
Yeah.
And Milch is kind of the same, and I see it most in his plotting stuff, where he has there are these conversations that I can't really understand what the characters are like trying to do in a technical sense, like why they're saying these things or what they're doing. But by the end of it, you just have a general sense of like how the characters are more than anything. And it's less about the specific details of things and more just about like, I get it once it's all over. Like when all the pieces have been knocked over and all the characters are done and some are left standing, I understand why those characters did the thing that they chose to do, even if I don't understand why they did them the way that they did them during the course of the episode.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with Shakespeare. Like I most times, anytime I watch like a Shakespeare play, I'm like, I don't know exactly what they're saying, but I get it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's good.
I understand what's going on, but I'm not exactly sure of the exact ins and outs of exactly what they're saying and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
That Milch should have got one of those, done one of those Q&As at like a college. Remember that interview with Patrick McGowan we watched?
Yes. Yeah.
After The Prisoner?
Yeah.
Where like all those college English majors were like, I noticed your use of the dwarf character echoes that of the literary non-epic, and I was wondering how. And he's just like, "Hey, man, it's about resigning, and I think computers are scary."
This is about resigning. No, that's because it was the same. There was like the Wire writers did the same thing in front of a bunch of like English lit kids, and they were just spoilers for the Wire, but they were blown away that one of the writers came up with the idea about in season 3 with Avon and Stringer when they betray each other. And they're aware that they're betraying each other, but they're both acting like they can't. Like there was just this. It was kind of embarrassing. Just this sort of like it's clearly a good idea to do that, and very literally like interesting in terms of a narrative. But it's not something that you're not putting a man on the moon coming up with that sort of plot line. You know what I mean? It's that weird thing.
Yeah, it's that's one of the most interesting things about creating stuff like that is when it gets into the hands of other people who are, then it's their prerogative as to how they digest it and see what they want to see and what they think are allusions to things that are just ideas that popped into your head while you're having a tuna fish sandwich or whatever.
Yeah, or just an inference that you didn't, the creator didn't consciously make at all. There's no intent behind it. It just kind of works out that way.
Yeah, I used to listen to a Doctor Who podcast that was hosted by 3 like Doctor Who mega fan types who had seen everything.
Yep.
And every episode of the new show, there would be like 2 things where there would be like that. Of course, the use of the fact that he was wearing a red tie has to be a reference to the skulls of Ulnar from season 3 in 1975. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. Maybe honestly, Doctor Who knows? Maybe, but I'm going to say probably not. I think he just looked good in a red tie.
Yeah.
It's like I had heard one time Ray Bradbury was talking to a college class or something, and everyone was like, "Yeah, Fahrenheit 451 is such an important text on censorship," and he's like, "It's not about censorship; it's about how much I think TV sucks."
Yep. Yeah. I read Fahrenheit recently, and I was less impressed with it.
Oh, really?
Than I was.
I loved that book. Yeah, that was my favorite book in high school. I haven't read it probably since then, but I loved that book.
Yeah, it inverted for me. I did not like 1984 in high school, and I liked Fahrenheit, but now it's the opposite, I think, when I read them both fairly recently. Like, 1984 is just clearly a better book than Fahrenheit is.
When you said it inverted for me, I was like, oh, so you're on the side of the book burners this time around?
Yes, I understand that sometimes you have to heat your house, and that books have to be the first thing to go. That's it. I guess The Horrors Can Come is over and done with. We've talked about it. We are up to the season finale in our next episode, which is called, what is it called? It's called like The Boy. Oh, I put the book away.
It was the best of times. It was the Hearst of times.
The Hearst of times. I think it's The Boy the Earth Talks To is the name of the episode. So thank you for listening. Yeah, Boy the Earth Talks To. Thank you for listening, everybody. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-files. Support us there. A couple extra bucks gets you all this extra content. There's a whole bunch of podcasts about movies and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. We'll probably do a Western once season 3 is done and put that on Patreon, since we'll probably take a break between the end of the series and the start of the movie to give us a little taste of what it felt like to wait 15 years for the movie to come out. See if we can forget things a little bit in the meantime.
I have a feeling that if among the choices that we give them, if one of them is a John Wayne movie, that one's going to win only because people know I have thoughts about John Wayne.
About John Wayne. John, I just know Public Enemy. Now I can't remember the line. What does it say? Mother racist, motherfuck him and John Wayne. Yeah, motherfuck him. Yeah, Elvis was racist, simple and plain. That's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Check out the Rotten Horror Picture Show. Amanda and I on Patreon this year are doing films from the Video Nasties list. July is a movie called The Bay of Blood, which is an Italian... it's kind of it's a giallo movie that came out right before the giallo boom, and actually like the middle of it is literally just Friday the 13th.
Sure.
And so it's this weird proto movie that kind of has been lost a little bit as far as most people are concerned. But if you watch it, it's like it's 1971, so it's 3 years before Texas Chainsaw and Black Christmas.
Yep.
It's almost 10 years before Friday the 13th. It's like 6 or 7 years before Halloween.
Yep.
And it's basically just doing all the slasher tropes you could possibly think of. So it's an interesting watch, and it has one of the more batshit crazy endings I've ever seen. So that's going to be a fun one to talk about. And Sean and I just did The Flash on Patreon for Badass, and there is a new comic that I wrote called Batman. What's it called? Batman White Knight Presents Generation Joker. Number 3 is on the shelves right now, written by myself and Sean and Katana Collins. So if you check that out, be much obliged.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Something Pretty. This is our Deadwood podcast. We're almost done with the second season. We only have 12 episodes after the next episode. We only have a little bit left of the show.
Oh, boy.
It's been short. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you thought. Leave some comments, join the Discord, all that stuff. And we will be back next week with The Boy the Earth Talks To. See ya.
Let me ask you something. You think you're giving me a treat? Drooling on my fucking nuts because I happen not to enjoy it.
Sorry?
It's a strange fucking sensation. Distracts me from my hard-on. Fucking caskets. Bring out the dunce in the entire fucking community. I took some fucking beating after my brother's fucking funeral. Smack's coming from every fucking angle. Still dizzy from the smack from the left. Here comes the smack from the right. Brain can't bounce around fast enough. Headache I fucking had for 3 fucking weeks. Fuck fault is it of mine if my fucking brother croaks? Ain't even my fucking brother. Fucking people take me in. I didn't ask him to fucking take me in. Fucking flopping like a fish on the dock. My brother the perch. Fucking fallen sickness. Let the old man beat you because he's sad. He has his load on. I did better in the orphanage. That fat-ass Mrs. Anderson hadn't turned out a fucking pimp. Anyways, how was the funeral? Did you carry on, disgrace yourself?
No,
Everyone was sad, I expect.
but it was pretty too.
Shut up. You dye your hair?